Now that all of the Ultra Beasts have been released in Pokemon Go, and with many of them actually coming back into rotation for Pokemon Go Fest, I thought it would actually be a good idea to do a full meta-analysis going over every single one of them. So with that being said, this video is going to be focusing on all 9 Ultra Beasts, and if you guys want to actually see the meta-analysis for Necrozma along with Solgaleo and Lunala, that's going to be covered in a separate video. So feel free to come back to this video at any point in time if you guys need to remind yourselves which ones are actually worth focusing on. Timestamps are going to be linked down below as always, but with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. The first Pokemon that we're going to be taking a look at is going to be Nihilego. So Nihilego is currently the best non-mega poison type attacker in the game with Poison Jab plus Sludge Bomb. None of the other poison type attackers in the game even come close to this. It is without a doubt one of the best investments for your poison type raid team. The best shadow poison type attacker in the game currently is Shadow Toxicroak, and even at level 40, this is still slightly worse than Nihilego at level 30, so yeah, that's a pretty big difference. Not to mention it's also going to cost you more Stardust to power up a Shadow Toxicroak, whereas Nihilego you can actually lucky trade. Now when it comes down to PvP, Nihilego does actually rank within the top 100 for Open Master League with Poison Jab plus Sludge Bomb and Rock Slide, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend using this Pokemon unless you have a very specific team to build it with. Now if you guys do end up getting the hundo for Nihilego, it is going to max out at 4,465 CP at level 50, and it's most likely not going to be outclassed until we eventually see its shadow form make an appearance in Pokemon Go, which to be honest is probably a few years away, so this is a very safe investment at the moment. Now for our next Pokemon, we're going to be going over Buzzwole. So Buzzwole isn't actually meta relevant for the raid/gym meta, but it does have PvP relevance in all the open league formats, so Great League, Ultra League, and Master League. So Buzzwole is going to be ranked within the top 150 for the Open Great League, it's going to be ranked within the top 50 for the Open Ultra League, and then finally it's going to be ranked within the top 50 for the Open Master League. So all around it actually has some pretty good relevance in all Open League formats. Now the only known way to actually get Buzzwole for the Great League is if you actually got it from a special research quest, so I'm pretty sure that had to be the Go Fest special research quest. I don't think there was any other ones besides that. Now assuming that you did actually get one of these, you could also trade this with another player to potentially get even better PvP IVs, which is strongly recommended if you did decide to build one. Although that being said, it may be really difficult to find someone who also has one from the special research because most people probably got it from raid battles. So once again, this is specifically for the Open Great League, which again, it has the least meta relevance compared to the other 2 Open League formats. Now for the Open Ultra League, you guys can just trade the ones you got from raid battles, which makes it a lot more easier, at least in terms of accessibility. And then of course for the Open Master League, you will want the hundo, which at level 50, it does max out at 3,922 CP. Now it's completely up to you guys if you do want to build one of these for any of the Open League formats. I do think Buzzwole will be pretty relevant for quite some time because it does actually have access to a pretty good move pool within its typing for bug/fighting. The ideal moveset that you want to have on your Buzzwole for all the Open League formats is going to be Counter plus Superpower and Lunge. Next up, let's go over Pheromosa. So Pheromosa is currently the best non-mega bug type attacker in the game with Bug Bite plus Bug Buzz. In terms of meta relevance though, it is going to be pretty close to Volcarona. This is Larvesta's evolution, and we all know how difficult it is to actually hatch this Pokemon. Not to mention it's going to require 400 candy to evolve, so I would wager that 99% of the player base probably doesn't have this yet. In the current timeline though, Pheromosa is a lot more accessible when it does eventually make its way into rotation, not to mention the shiny is super cool. Now this Pokemon is on the Glacier side, very similar to Gengar, which is why I don't actually use mine too often. Also combined with the fact that bug type Pokemon aren't used too often in general in Pokemon Go, since other typings are actually better used against those that are also weak to bug types. So when it comes down to it, building multiple Pheromosa probably isn't recommended. Not to mention Pheromosa also has 0 relevance in PvP, so please don't bother using this. Now on a personal note, I would love to build a shiny lucky version of Pheromosa just to have it as a unique option amongst my bug type Pokemon, but in terms of overall meta relevance, it's probably not worth investing into past level 40. The next Pokemon that we're going to be talking about is going to be Xurkitree, which is currently the 2nd best electric type attacker in the game with Thunder Shock plus Discharge. This currently falls right below Shadow Raikou, which is the best electric type attacker in the game. In terms of overall meta relevance though, it's part of the big 3 in this category, so Shadow Raikou, Xurkitree, and Zekrom are all excellent investments, and the difference between them is actually very minimal. I would actually say that each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. Now if you guys do actually want a more in-depth analysis between these 3 Pokemon, I do strongly recommend checking out my best Pokemon and power-up videos. Those are going to be linked down below. Now when it comes down to Xurkitree and PvP, this is currently ranked within the top 200 for the Open Master League, which to be honest, that isn't really that viable. So I would actually go as far to say that this Pokemon does not have any PvP relevance currently, but it could actually be given a move in the future that does make it more relevant. I don't know if it would actually be meta breaking, but it would definitely help it in the Open Master League. Now if you guys do actually get the hundo for Xurkitree, it's going to max out at 4,451 CP at level 50, and it likely won't be outclassed until we see Shadow Thundurus or Zekrom in the meta. So just like Nihilego, this is a very safe investment for the future. The next Pokemon that we're going to be going over is going to be Celesteela, which actually has some pretty interesting play, but not in the way that you would expect. So first of all, Celesteela is not meta relevant in the raid/gym meta whatsoever. Like, this Pokemon is just completely terrible when it comes down to that format, but it does have PvP relevance in the Open Ultra League format. At the moment, it is currently ranked within the top 250 for the Open Ultra League, which again isn't really ideal, but it's not terrible either. With the right team build, this Pokemon is definitely usable, but of course you do want to trade this with somebody else in order to get better IVs on it. Now Celesteela does actually have a use outside of battle though, and that is going to be in showcases. So again, not really what people were expecting here, but thanks to it being a dual flying and steel type Pokemon and being extremely heavy, like seriously one of the heaviest Pokemon in the game, it sweeps the competition in the all flying type showcases. And given Niantic's lack of care for this sort of thing, I don't see them banning this Pokemon anytime soon in showcases. And for those unfamiliar, showcases were actually one of the best additions to Pokemon Go in 2023 because you can get premium items if you actually place first or second in multiple showcases. So basically when it comes down to it, while Celesteela does have limited relevance in the raid/gym meta as well as PvP, you definitely do want to have some in your storage for potential showcases. And I totally forgot to mention this as well, but Celesteela and Kartana have been Pokemon that have been typically featured in the northern and southern hemisphere, so Celesteela for the southern hemisphere and then Kartana for the northern hemisphere. And I believe for GoFest, this is going to be the first time where we actually have both of those Pokemon just featured in both hemispheres. On that note though, the next Pokemon that we are going to be going over is going to be Kartana, which is currently the best non-Mega Grass type attacker in the game with Razor Leaf plus Leaf Blade. This is by far one of my favorite Pokemon to use for rocket battles too when the opponent is weak against Grass type Pokemon. Now when it comes down to Grass type options below Kartana that are non-Mega, the next two best options would be Shaman in its Sky form and Zarude, which are both mythical Pokemon. Not to mention the other top Grass type Pokemon that are below Kartana as well as Shaman and Zarude are all going to be Shadow variants, which actually makes Kartana that much more cost effective because you can lucky trade it. So in my opinion guys, it is without a doubt one of the best investments you guys can make for your Grass type raid team, and trust me when I say this, it is such a killer when it comes down to rocket battles. Now if we actually take a look at Kartana in the PvP meta, it is ranked within the top 200 for the Open Master League, which isn't really that viable, I'm going to be honest here. So I would say that it doesn't really have any relevance, like it has maybe a very little bit, and even if it was given like a different move pool in the future, I don't really think it would actually make it that much better. Now with that being said, if you guys do end up getting the hundo from raid battles, Kartana is going to max out at 4,156 CP at level 50, and it likely won't be outclassed until we see a Shadow variant make an appearance in game, which most likely won't be for a few years. So very similar to Nihilego and Xurkitree, this is a very safe investment for the future. Moving on, let's take a look at Guzzlord next. So Guzzlord is not a great dark type attacker compared to the overall meta at the moment, but it's not the worst either. Given that Tyranitar with Bite plus Brutal Swing is a much better option, not to mention it's easier to get candy on, I would probably focus my resources on that Pokemon along with its Shadow variant. For reference here, a level 35 Tyranitar non-Shadow is slightly more powerful than a level 50 Guzzlord. So ultimately when it comes down to building your dark type attackers, Tyranitar is going to be superior, and then not to mention if you end up getting Shadow Tyranitar, my goodness, I mean you're pretty much going to be set for a while with that Pokemon. Now with that being said though, Guzzlord does have some pretty good play in the Open Great League and Ultra League format. At the moment, Guzzlord is currently going to be ranked within the top 20 for the Open Great League format as well as the Open Ultra League format, so among the Ultra Beasts, this is probably one of the better ones for PvP. Now on top of that, Guzzlord is also ranked within the top 100 for the Open Master League as well. Now the only known way to actually get Guzzlord for the Great League is pretty similar to Buzzwole. You have to get it from special research in order to actually keep this Pokemon under 1500 CP. Not to mention, you ideally do want to trade this with another player to potentially get better PvP IVs, which is strongly recommended. Now we talked about this with Buzzwole too. It's probably going to be really difficult to find somebody who also has a special research Guzzlord that's below 1500 CP, so I mean honestly it's a little bit unrealistic here, but if you are able to get one, I mean the ranking is super good for the Open Great League. Now of course for the Open Ultra League, you guys can just trade the ones you get from raid battles, which makes it a lot more easier in terms of accessibility. And then finally for Master League, you will of course want the hundo. At level 50 it's going to max out at 3,254 CP. That being said though, I personally would not build this one though, because you have other dark type options that are probably going to be much better, like Yveltal. So ultimately when it comes down to it, I think if you guys are able to get some good IV spreads for the Great League and Ultra League formats, it's definitely worth building a Guzzlord. Like it has access to a great moveset and it's most likely going to maintain its meta relevance for quite some time. Next up, let's talk about Naganadel. So Naganadel is going to be the second best non-mega poison type attacker in the game with Poison Jab plus Sludge Bomb, and it's going to evolve from Poipole with 200 candy. Now comparing Naganadel to Nihilego, this Pokemon is going to be a few points lower in terms terms of the ER scale, but I do think it's actually a pretty cool Pokemon to build if you do want something different. I've actually had many of you guys over the years tell me that you don't like running 6 of the same Pokemon in your raid teams, and to be honest, even though Nihilego is totally the GOAT, it's probably not a bad idea to actually build your Naganadel. Now, despite actually being released through a seasonal research quest and kind of seeming like it's a mythical Pokemon, Poipole is actually not a mythical Pokemon, so you can totally lucky trade it. That's actually what I did to get better IVs on mine, and mine actually ended up rolling much better the second time around. Now, when it comes down to PvP though, this Pokemon has 0 meta relevance, so I would not recommend using this for any of the open league formats. So personally speaking, I'm totally going to take my Naganadel to level 40. Next up, let's take a look at our most disappointing Ultra Beast so far, so that is going to be Stakataka. So Stakataka is not meta relevant in the raid/gym meta as a rock type attacker because its base stats and movesets hold it back compared to your other options. It also has 0 relevance in the PvP meta currently because even though it has the right stats to be good, it does not have access to a good move pool currently. Now, if Stakataka does actually get access to a better move pool in the future, it does actually have some potential. So if you guys wanted to start trading for this Pokemon now in order to get a good PvP IV spread, that might actually be a smart play. Otherwise, this is actually one of the only Ultra Beasts that is completely useless at the moment. Finally, let's take a look at our last Ultra Beast, which is going to be Blacephalon. So Blacephalon is basically an upgraded Chandelure, which does make it meta relevant in both the Fire type and Ghost type categories for the raid/gym meta. If you decide to run it as a Fire type attacker, the ideal moveset is going to be Incinerate plus Mystical Fire, and if you want to run it as a Ghost type attacker, the ideal moveset is going to be Astonish plus Shadow Ball. Now, Blacephalon actually has access to a signature move called Mind Blown, which has not been released yet. So when this comes out, this will most likely be an upgrade to Mystical Fire, making it a lot more meta relevant in the Fire type category. Blacephalon can also learn Shadow Claw in the main series games, which means that Niantic could potentially add this to its move pool in the future, making it a much better Ghost type attacker as well. So essentially this means that Blacephalon could become a more viable raid attacker in the future, even though it's already pretty good amongst the other Pokemon in its respective categories. Now, unfortunately, there isn't really much PvP relevance for Blacephalon because its only play at the moment is going to be within the Open Master League, which it currently ranks within the top 150, which isn't really that viable. Now, once again though, with the addition of its signature move along with Shadow Claw, this would actually bump it up in the meta quite a bit, so we just have to wait until that eventually comes out, but I'm gonna be honest here, that's probably a ways down the road, like at least maybe 1 to 2 years. Now, unfortunately, compared to the other Ultra Beasts, because Stakataka and Blacephalon were released very recently, neither of them actually have access to their shiny forms, so I wouldn't raid hard for either of these Pokemon until those shiny forms come into rotation, and then I would go a little bit harder for them, because again, Blacephalon definitely has some good potential on the horizon. We just have to be a little bit patient there. And with that being said, that pretty much covers all of the Ultra Beasts except for Solgaleo, Lunala, and Necrozma, although technically they're considered legendary Pokemon, but their fusions, Duskmane and Dawnwings, are considered Ultra Beasts, so it's a little bit complicated. Either way, if you guys want to know how good those Pokemon actually are, then check out this video right here, but before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon in the next one.